I remember I was 7 years old and I was invited to go to a vacation Bible school. At the very end on a Friday, they're like, okay, if you want to receive Jesus, come forward. I go forward. But when I get up there, I heard spiritual voices. The very first voice that spoke, he says,
"Serve me for 7 years. When you are done with 7 years, you can do what you want."
And then another voice speaks, and it sounded like a waterfall, but it had a voice to it, and it said, "Serve me for all of your days. When your body dies, I will give it life." The kid that's leading me to Christ is saying, "Do you want to serve Satan or Jesus?" And I said, "Satan."
Norman, welcome to God's Voice Today podcast. I am beyond excited to have you on the show. We just connected literally like less than an hour ago on one of my 15-minute phone calls. And by the way, if you're new to this channel, every day I take, I don't know, about like 6 phone calls every single day. And people call me from all over the world. They share their supernatural encounters that they have with Jesus. And Norman was one of those people. He scheduled a call. By the way, you can go to godsvoicetoday.com/call. You can schedule a call with me for absolutely free. But Norman, you mentioned some supernatural things. And I don't want to tell them all because I don't want to spoil anything. But for everyone watching, people that don't know you, can you zoom out, kind of paint the picture of what your life was like leading up to all of those supernatural encounters? And you had many, by the way.
My time in the spiritual, spiritual and the supernatural, began at the age of 3, but the more intense began at the age of 7. Now, my parents left the Amish when I was 2 years old, and they had left the Amish because they were aware that there is a way to understand the Bible easier in an English Bible versus the German Bible they were told they have to read. In fact, they were told if you read any Bible that is not, if you read a Bible that is German, you will go to heaven. If you read any other Bible that is not German, if you read an English Bible, you will go to hell. Like, that level of incongruency really messed with their minds. And so I'm now, from birth to 7, my life is pretty well even. I have this one experience at the age of 3 that we can come back to later. But it literally set the foundation as to whether or not I could relate to other people with love or fear. And it's a very nuanced thing. But I remember I was 7 years old and I was invited to go to a vacation Bible school. And for those not familiar, that's like it's usually shortened to VBS, but it's a 1-week long, kids come in every day. They get taught about the Bible. They have activities. It's usually pretty fun. This particular church, they are a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching church this year. And it was 1989. This particular year, for whatever reason, they had this understanding that they don't have to pray at the beginning of each of the sessions. And so when it came time to get down into each of the activities, it would just be like, we're gonna go for it. We know we're in God's house, we are safe. And when I asked my aunt, she's like, if you ever tell this story, please don't tell my name. But when I asked my aunt about it, she said that particular year, they had decided that praying over the land and just giving the land over to God, that would be good enough. But if they didn't, pray over each of the times the kids came together in each of the classrooms, because they had like 8 different activities planned for every day. Let's not pause to pray for each of the 8 activities, because that's going to make the whole day really long and the kids are going to get bored. So they didn't pray. They did the kids together, watch something on a big screen TV, and then go to the activities. And that was the gist. And then at the very end on a Friday, they're like, okay, now we're going to come. If you want to receive Jesus, come forward. I go forward to receive what I was pretty sure is going to be Jesus. But when I get up there, and when I was in the 15-minute with you, I didn't give the actual what the voice sounded like. But the very first voice that spoke, it says,
Serve me for 7 years. When you are done with 7 years, you can do what you want.
and I'm like, okay, I've never heard a human voice like that. And then another voice speaks, and it sounded like a waterfall or a bunch of ocean waves. But it had a voice to it, and it said, serve me for all of your days. When your body dies, I will give it life. And I'm like, okay. Weird. Yeah. Thinking on my dad's side of the family, thinking on my mom's side of the family. Nobody's dying before the age of 14. I'm 7 years old. I got 7 years to spare. And so I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can literally give myself over to whatever this other voice says. What kid at 7 years old doesn't want to just do whatever they want? That was the perspective. And so as I'm having this thought of I can just do whatever I want, the kid that's leading me to Christ is saying, do you want to serve Satan or Jesus? And I said, Satan. He says, no, you don't want to serve Satan. You want to serve Jesus. And I'm like, clearly he did not just hear the conversation that I heard. And my understanding is what needs to, I know what I've experienced. So obviously I know what's right. So yeah, I'm going to do what I want. And the kid's like, but that means you're not going to serve Jesus. And I'm just like, I don't care. So yeah, it was like that. And so then, when I went back to my seat, I'm like, okay, cool. I went to a church that I heard a voice tell me that I can do what I want. Yes. So, I didn't realize until I was 12 that I had not heard from God. Because at the age of 12 and 13, I began to hate myself with such a level of intensity that I knew this hate was not coming from me, and I was trying to kill myself. But that's jumping a little bit too far. But from the ages of 7 to 9, I was reading the Bible. Now, someone serving witchcraft, reading the Bible. What? And until I heard the story of James Kawalya, where he talked about being in the occult and studying the Bible for 8 hours, sometimes 12 hours a day, just to find ways to get into arguments with Christians. And I was like, okay, so people in the occult reading the Bible to get into arguments, okay, that actually makes sense. But I was reading the Bible because something wasn't making sense to me. On the one hand, my parents were telling me that they were Christians and they were reading the Bible. And then this understanding that I had at the age of 7 was that I heard spiritual voices. Why did they not hear spiritual voices? I have these spiritual experiences. Why do they not have spiritual experiences? So I began to read the Bible because I knew somewhere there was a lie. Either the book was a lie, or the way they understood was a lie, or the way they lived was a lie. Somewhere there was a lie. So I would literally read the Bible, go to the Strong's Concordance to see where the lie was. And to my shock, it wasn't in the Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic or Chaldean or lexicon. It was not in the English Bible. There was no difference. It was very, very little difference between the original languages, the translation. I'm like, okay, something is missing. Why are they reading the Bible and the Bible is full of spiritual experiences? Why are my parents not having spiritual experiences? And so I began to read a book by the name of Rebecca Brown. The book is called He Came to Set the Captives Free. In that book, she's writing about how she helped walk this woman out of witchcraft. And I'm thinking, am I actually in witchcraft? Is that really what's happening? I'm just doing what I want. How is doing what I want witchcraft? Surely it can't be. But I'm reading the book, and I see that in the book, the author explains how to astral project. Now, the book is written in the 70s, before this mixture of witches in churches was normal. And so back then, it was very common for a person who was giving their testimony to explain exactly how it happened. Because they didn't think that the testimony being within a church would somehow carry into being being analyzed by people who were not yet Christian to then go into witchcraft. That connection hadn't been made. So when I'm reading this book and I'm seeing how to actually go into astral projection, I see that the only thing I have to do is to have a candle in my room and to stare into the light of that candle until my soul lifted up and out. And I was like, okay, if that's all it takes, my mom has plenty of candles. And so I knew I couldn't just randomly take a whole bunch of candles up in my room, and because she gets suspicious. So the first thing I started to do is I started to play with the candles while they were in the dining room area. And so I'm just playing with the candles, and I'm looking at the candles, and I'm asking all these questions about the candles. Specifically, so my mom would think, oh, is it my son is into candles? That's odd. But I kept pestering her over and over, kept bugging her with all these questions. So finally she said, take the candles and do what you want. Ha! I got validation. I went to a church where they said I can do what I want. Now my mom also said I can do what I want. So I took them up in my room. And at night, I'd light them. Make sure it's surrounded by water so it can't set my room on fire, and look in the candle. And the first night, it took almost 45 minutes before I finally felt pulling. And my soul was up, and now I was in my room, and I was like, wow, this is pretty neat. I go to get onto my bed to lay down, and I ended up in the basement. Just fell right through. Okay, not what I didn't realize that if I lay, I go. That's when I first realized that in the spiritual, all the physical objects that our physical bodies connect with, it's not the same in the spiritual. So I come back up to the floor, and I walk over into my wall, and I end up in the chimney, because the chimney is right next to my bedroom. And I look up, and I see the stars. I look down, and I can see the rock. I can see the bottom of the chimney, but I can also see the foundation of the chimney. I'm like, that's pretty weird. I look up, and I see a cloud. I was like, I wonder what it'd be like. And as the moment I said, I wonder what it'd be like, instantly I'm in the cloud. And I look down, and the whole landscape is just really, really tiny. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty neat. This is the best thing I've ever experienced for doing what I want. But then I got to the point where, all right, I'm getting sleepy. So I said, okay, I'm going back. And my body dropped like a stone until it got to the house. And then it very slowly shifted and I came right back into my body. I was like, whoa, that's amazing. I want to tell my mom. To my shock, I could not find her bedroom. Because I rested for a bit and then I looked in the candle, right back out, went to her bedroom, couldn't find it. The entire bedroom was inside like a cliff. I could see where the location, the part of the house where her bedroom would be. But that section was solid rock. And I could not see through. I couldn't even tell whether or not she's alive in there.
Before we get back to the episode, if you're enjoying this interview, can you take a second to subscribe? It really helps us reach more people with these powerful stories. Thank you in advance. Now let's get back to the interview.
That was baffling. And so I was like, okay, whatever. I'm going to sleep. So for a couple nights, I'm only doing this at night. And finally I realized, what if the issue is I'm doing it at night? I'm going to do it while it's daylight. So I go up my room, light a candle. Pretty soon, and it'd be practice, I could just pull up and out. Didn't realize that this is not of God. I did not realize this yet. And so I go downstairs. There's no longer a concrete whatever over my parents' bedroom. Now I can see right inside it. I was like, what in the world's going on? So I come down the steps and I go into her bedroom, touch the bed cover, boom, right back in my body. What? So I go back, down the steps, into her bedroom, looking around, go into her master bathroom, excuse me. Look in the mirror. I don't see myself. It's like I'm looking right through a wall. The mirror is not there. What in the world? Because I'm on the other side of that mirror would be the front porch, and I'm looking like I'm looking out the front porch. Where'd the mirror go? I cannot see the mirror. Okay, that's weird. So I go back through the house, and the same concrete block or whatever is sitting where her sewing machine is. And I can't see her there. Now, I know that the time of day she would be sewing. Why can't I hear her? Why can't I see her? And so I go back in my body. I come down the steps, go into the parents' bedroom, and I touch the cover. No problem. Go into the bathroom. I see myself in the mirror. Okay. Come back out. Sure enough, my mom's sitting at her sewing machine reading the Bible. I'm like, okay. Don't quite understand what's going on. So then, okay, next thing. I go back upstairs, sit down, light the candle, come down to my dad's work desk, and I see chains that go out. I see little silver chains. They're sitting in his desk, and the chains go out the window to his garden. He's got a great big collection of a flower garden. And I go out, and I see all these various flowers out in his flower garden, and there are chains. And I follow the chains to the desk,